Welcome to Spiritual United Paradox, literally Language of the Heart Spirit Gathering. All our speakers are shared on our WhatsApp audio groups and our speaker channels. The link will be dropped in the chat. Tonight we've got a special. We've got Pat T and Tyla C from San Diego, California, are here to share on Ignited through the Big Book Awakening. Over to you guys.
Youngster, unmute, bud. There you go. There you
There we
go.
go.
You're all
Hi,
set.
everyone. Yay, thanks, Pat. Hi, everyone. I'm Tyla, and I am a real addict. Cocaine, heroin, pills, your husband, your girlfriend. Doesn't matter when I'm using what I can go for. Right, Pat?
Oh yeah, that's hilarious.
And I'm a real alcoholic, and I got clean and sober in Cocaine Anonymous when it was brand new in 1989 is my sobriety date. By the grace of God, it is my God-given sobriety date. And I'm coming up on 36 years by the grace of God and the miracle of this incredible program and the 12 steps and all of you. And what an honor to be here, Joey, and for you guys to ask us to share on the Big Book Awakening. And I want to look at the time because don't want to go over my time. And I don't know if you're timing us, but I don't want to go over 30 minutes because I don't want to take any time from Pat. And I'm so honored to be here. I love CA out of London. You guys rock. I mean, I announce on our BBA meetings, you got to go to the CA meetings out of London. It's the most powerful fellowship going right now. I really believe that. You guys are amazing. Every single CA meeting I go to, I'm like, whoa, because CA isn't that strong in the US. I'm sorry to say that, but it just isn't, and I just love it. And so I want to tell you about how the Big Book Awakening came to San Diego, how it began. And there's a lot of people on here that know it, and I hope they'll stay after and share some of their experience with it. But I was 12 years sober and clean and working a really good program, doing everything they told me, doing county detox every week, doing Vista Jail every once a month for 10 years, sponsoring a lot of people, doing everything I was supposed to do. And you know what, guys? I was dying inside. Now, I didn't know it in the beginning, but when I became about, I want to say 10 years uh, clean, I just started not to feel right on the inside, and it probably was there longer, but I'm so good at being in denial and fantasy that I probably just denied it. But when I started to tell people, you know what, I'm not right. Something is wrong inside of me. I'm not doing good for what they're telling me. I'm doing everything they're telling me, and I'm not right. And it's so good to see Seth here. When I came home one day at 12 years sober, I came home and I sat in my room and I thought, I have guns. I thought, you know what? I want to blow my brains out. Now, I came in the program with behind a suicide attempt when God spoke to me and my life was changed in an instant. I had the flash of a spiritual experience, just like Bill W. says. I went to bed one person and woke up another person. And that is the power of God. But I sat there on my floor and I thought, oh my God, how did this ever happen? How did this happen? No one had an answer. Everybody said, oh, sponsor more, meditate more, do more commitments, do more this. Nothing worked. Okay. And the next day, God answers our prayers. And if I'm not listening enough, I'm not going to hear it. If I'm too busy for God, I'm too busy. And I'm too busy to listen to God, I'm too busy. And the next day, a gal I sponsored who I met up with said to me, Tyla, I know you love to listen to CDs, which I do. And she gave me a cassette at that time, because this is over 20 years ago. She gave me a cassette, and I put it in my car when I left her. And I'm telling you guys, it was like God was speaking to me out of the audio in my car. And it was Mark Houston, The Glass House. And I had never heard recovery like that in my life. I had never heard Mark Houston. I had never heard Joe Hawk. I never heard these guys. And I was so I was so crazy for it. I listened to it so much that my friends started calling me Tyla Houston. I I you know what I mean? I had to have every single word he said. Finally, I got a hold of him in Texas. About 3 months later, I got a hold of Mark and I said, I'm sending you a first class ticket to San Diego. I want you, will you take me through the work the way you do it? And Mark said yes. And Mark came out to San Diego. And when he came, he brought me the Big Book Awakening. He never told me he was bringing me that. I never heard of it in my life. And that's what he was using was the Big Book Awakening. And that he took Joe Hawk also through the Big Book Awakening. And so he took me through the work, and it was a powerful time because it felt like everything when you, when you're in the will of God sometimes, not every time, but sometimes, and Pat knows this so well, when you're in the will of God, things sometimes just sweep you up. You know what I mean? Like everything is like boom, 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 falling into place. And there was like a wind, a tornado, a positive tornado that happened when all of this began. And I did the work. I had sponsees at my house, and we were doing Theater of the Lie upstairs in one of my spare bedrooms. And we were doing the work. And Mark did a woman's retreat in San Diego for 50 women, and it was incredible. And we'd never heard recovery like this. I'd never heard the spiritual malady. I knew I was suffering. I knew it was deeper than the way that I did the steps, which wasn't like anything like the Big Book Awakening. It was just chipping kind of at the surface. And it wasn't, it was, I would say, surface recovery. I don't even know I could say I was covered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, but spiritually I was not there. I didn't even know that I suffered from a spiritual malady. I didn't even know I suffered from a spiritual disease. I have a spiritual disease, separation from God, that manifests as a spiritual malady on page 52. Trouble in personal relations, can't seem to make a living that matters, full of fear, got resentment, all of those things. That was my life, but I was so good at stuffing it because there was no answer. And when I saw it with Mark, it just like poured out of me, all of this stuff. And by doing the work, turning statements into questions and doing the work the way the Big Book Awakening says, we transcribe the whole book, making I statements, putting our name in it, making it personal to us. Okay. And when I did that, and I was transcribing at home alone. No one in San Diego ever heard of BBA. And I was transcribing at home alone, and something was happening to me. Transcribing, I'll tell you, it's a pain in the ass. It isn't easy, and I hope I never transcribe another book. But I know people that love it, but they're not many. But it changed my life. When I was transcribing the book, something was happening in my spirit, deep within me, that had never happened. I was being changed. I can't even put my finger on it. I think I would diminish it by putting a name to it, but there became a connection to God that I never had. I believed in God, but I don't think I ever had access to God. I don't think I had what the Big Book promises because no one understood it, because the sponsorship in the rooms is not good. It's not strong. Maybe where you live it is. It is not strong here. I couldn't find a sponsor that could have given me what's in the Big Book Awakening. If it was good, we wouldn't need the Big Book Awakening, but it's not good. Everyone's doing this half-assed this. Let's do Hazelton, including me, by the way. Let's do this. Let's do that. All the ways that people are doing the work, amen to them. Great, right? But it couldn't take me where the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous promised me I could go. Only when I had a deep and effective experience with the Big Book Awakening that touched a part of me that never been touched. Every single step took me to a spiritual experience. It's not just at the end, it's every single one, right, Seth? You wake up and you do the spiritual malady exercise, right? And you do it, and you're awake in a way you've never been awake before, because I didn't see that the problem was with the spiritual malady and all the bedevilments. And you remember, Bill believed in the devil before he believed in God. So the bedevilment is there. You don't have to believe in the devil. I do, but I believe it's the evil spirits, whatever you want to believe, that still can haunt my life. Bedevilment means haunted. Haunted by what? By, I believe, the evil of life, and I'm not haunted today. I am free as a result of this work. That this work is absolutely mind blowing and incredible. And I never saw when I did the Theater of the Lie with Mark Houston. I never did an extended third column. I didn't know what those things meant. Self-esteem, check. Ambition, check. They're asking me, what does that mean? That is such bullshit. Check, check, check. Write a check. You know what I mean? It was nothing. And when I started to do those things and seeing that the roles that I assign myself, I assign you roles. I assign me roles. And when I've worked with Mark, I could tell you so many stories about Mark. When I worked with Mark, he said to me, I'd call him on the phone when I was having, Mark, I'm mad. He goes, who's mad? I'm mad. No, no, no. He said, who's mad? Perfect girlfriend? Miss AA? Perfect daughter? Who's mad? I get so mad at him, you guys, because he pushed me to have to find out who's really mad. So what I saw in my life is that I had, right, Selena? I had all of these places. All of these roles that I played. Perfect sister, Miss AA, perfect sponsor, workout queen. All of these roles that I played, they never met. They never met. I was a scattered person. I wasn't, remember, if action is taken in all three areas, a circle and triangle, I can be whole. I was not whole. I was splintered. And by doing the work this way, my life became cohesive. It became whole. It became that when I am sponsoring, it's Tyla being a sponsor. It's not Tyla that became the sponsor. It's not a role I have to defend. It's not a role I have to play. And what happens in that extended third column is that's where I step on the toes of my fellows and they retaliate, seemingly without provocation, means I did nothing. But I invariably find that I made decisions based on self, which put me in a position to be hurt. My troubles are my own making. And if I don't see how I step on the toes of my fellows, if I don't see that paragraph on 62, I will not get what this big book is promising. And no work I ever did showed me that. I step on the toes of my fellows by the demands I make of who you need to be, how you need to see me. Because I gave you a script, but you won't read it. And that's the problem. So I have to try harder. And so I step on the toes of my fellows, and I see in that third column that I've been going to you to get what only God can give me. All those things are good in the third column when they come from God. But when I'm in fear, it drives it, bang, you know what I mean? And I just jump to trying to get it from someone that can't give it to me, and then they retaliate or get pissed at me, and then I'm mad at them. This is a terrible way to live. But until I saw it in black and white before my eyes and saw that I don't have to live like that anymore, that everything that I want in that third column that I need and I want, it's important, my security, God will give it to me. He will love to give it to me because I turn my will and my life over to the care of God. No tree, my higher power, no tree is going to be my creator. No doorknob. I need a personal relationship with God that the big book talks about. From the beginning of working with people in the BBA, we are taking them to God. Not, oh, don't rush that newcomer. No, he might die before you rush him. We are talking about with that, right, Shawnee? With that newcomer, we are God, God, God from the beginning. It's a God of your understanding, but it better be a God. And if you don't have one, you better start praying and meditating from the beginning. Pat will tell you, oh, Pat's so solid on this. You know, we don't mess around. And this came from Mark and Dan. And Mark introduced me to Dan Sherman, who wrote the Big Book Awakening, who I worked with for 14 years. I don't mean like that, oh, I'm so great that I worked with Dan Sherman. I mean that I am so blessed that I worked with Dan Sherman. I am so incredibly grateful that I got to work with these incredible guys that I can pass on a way to live that you will have a life beyond anything you could imagine. And we in BBA, we had a meeting for a long, long time that averaged 300 people. So we saw a lot of people. Pat and I were super active in sponsorship and people and seeing what they're doing and all of that. And I would say we had an 80 to 85% recovery rate, like they had in the old days in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous that they talked about. We had chronic relapsers that were so chronic, right, Shawnee? They crawled into the meeting, so hopeless, and they recovered. Not because I'm so great, it's because the big book of AA is so great, but with the Big Book Awakening, you have experience and not knowledge. And how many of us do this work and have knowledge and don't have a deep and effective spiritual experience? Spiritual awakening, spiritual experience happen all through the book every day. The first spiritual experience all of us have is when we walk in a meeting and want to live instead of die. That is a spiritual experience because I know me, I wanted to die every day of my life. Don't tell me that I came into this program and I was getting ease and comfort from using. Hell no. I came in because crack had put me on the streets, had put me in pornography, and prostitution had ruined my life. Don't tell me that I'm looking to get it again, ease and comfort from it. There was no ease and comfort. Maybe in the beginning, but I was addicted. I used to tell God, I have died 1,000 deaths behind crack cocaine out there and doing the life that I was doing. And it was friggin' horrible, horrible. I don't wish it on anyone. And I know that you guys know that kind of life I'm talking about because it's CA and we know we come in here low. And that gift of desperation, we're in the first step for 2 months. If I don't get that first step to the deepest part of who I am, if I don't get that problem, I will not have the gift of desperation that pushes me to a solution that I must have. And we do it each week, one assignment at a time. We have a sponsorship assignment guide up on our website, BBA Works, up on Recovered From. And Michael K is on here tonight, who is BBA San Diego and South San Diego. And he has a workshop starting in 2 weeks, and I'm giving him a plug because he's incredible. And he does, last year he had 200 people, and you want to do the BBA, you just get on in Recovered From website and get on because this guy is amazing. He takes every addiction. You come in and you even make up an addiction, he'll take you. He doesn't care. He just takes everybody. I'm telling you, you're laughing, Sarah, but I'm telling you the truth. You know, we had skin pickers. Can you imagine? They were in there. Michael makes a group for him. No problem. Because he's the most incredible, loving guy. Because we have felt the love of God deeply, deeply in our hearts. God has entered into my heart and lives in a way which truly miraculous. That's page 25. That's the first friggin' step. Don't tell me I'm going to wait until you do, step 7, and then you're going to get God. Bullshit. It's in the first step. God. Dr. Silkworth's talking about God. Bill W.'s talking about God in his story. Let's wake up and start saving lives. One of the main things that drove me to the Big Book Awakening is that the people I was sponsoring weren't doing well. Something was wrong. Even if I didn't see it in me, I saw it in them. I wanted them to have great lives, and I didn't know how to give them what this big book has because no one took me through. My first sponsor took me through, but then I never did it again because I never knew. You just do 1 through 12, right? And you live in 10, 11, and 12. You don't need to do all 12 steps again. That's not what Mark and Joe and Don Priss believe. Oh, no, 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 no. Those guys were doing all 12 steps once a year. And we have mad dogs in our group that do it like that. And I did it like that for years. I don't anymore, but it really changed my life. That I would go through for a new experience. And don't tell me that you're going through with some friggin' guru. You know, I don't go through with gurus. I go through with the next newcomer that comes to me to go through the work. I go through with them because God is more powerful than anything. I don't need a person. I'm beyond human aid anyway. I don't need a person to lead me there. God will lead me and that newcomer to a deep and effective new experience, and it'll be good for that newcomer to hear my inventory, to see that I'm not perfect. Oh, almost. Now, I'm not perfect. You know what I mean? I mean that I'm a little lazy and I like to exaggerate sometimes, all of those things, but I'm not exaggerating about BBA. So I got the gift, and I want to tell you guys it's the most incredible gift ever. And I'm not here to sell you on BBA. BBA is not for everybody. It is deep, deep work. 2 hours a week of homework, an hour and a half meeting with your step guide or sponsor, being in a workshop. And the reason we have workshops is not because they're like we want to be great workshop givers. We have workshops because we were so overwhelmed with the amount of people that want to do BBA that we didn't have enough people to give them. I mean, BBA is so on fire right now all over the world. I have calls and my number's next to my name. Any of you can call me and I'll help you get connected, with someone that can take you through. We are on fire to help you have great lives. All of the people that do Big Book Awakening, not just me, because the people that do it are on fire. Sometimes I would take people through the work and they would just, oh yeah, not BBA. Oh yeah, recovery's great. And then they go to a meeting and they bitch about it because it's an open discussion meeting and it's not a big book meeting, and they're bitching about how their day is, and you want to go throw up. I don't want that kind of recovery. I want big book recovery, and all of us can have it. It's all there, whether you do BBA or not. Find someone that knows the big book. But if you're drawn to do BBA, we are here to help you. It will change your life. You'll have a life beyond anything you could imagine. God is so good, and I never had the relationship with God that I have today, and it's all because of Big Book Awakening. Thank you for letting me share. God bless you all.
Wow. Wow. Can you guys see why everybody loves Tyla? Can you see it? Can you see this? Her heart that you just heard, everybody, is exactly how she is in real life. This is the real deal. Tyla, I love you.
I love you so much, baby.
Man. Okay. Well, we'll keep this party going. Pat alcoholic. Nope, not a cocaine addict. Nope, I'm just a bottom fishing drunk. That's what I am. And God struck me sober on July the 9th, 2002. And I'm not going to go into a ton of detail of my story, but the bottom line was I was beyond desperate. I thought suicide was a good option. And I had one more shot at trying to do this thing called sobriety. For the 10 years previous, I was trying everything I knew how to stay sober, to get sober, and I couldn't pull it off. And I really didn't think God was going to do anything. I want to tell you something. I didn't come in here God-centered. I did not come in here God-focused. I did not come in here wanting a relationship with God. I didn't want any input from God. In fact, I would have been perfectly happy if the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous had nothing to do with God. That's where I came. That's how I came in. And the reason for that is I had this warped perception that God, who loves me beyond anything I could even imagine or breathe or speak, he saved me. But when I was out there, I'm asking God on a daily basis for 10 years, save me, save me, save me. Please don't let me drink. Please don't let me drink. I'm losing my first marriage. I'm losing my second marriage. I lost my 3 kids. I've lost my family. I've lost my business. Please don't let me drink. Please don't let me drink. And guys, my experience was I drank. That was my experience. So I get sober in Denver, Colorado. And Don Pritz is there. And Bob Olson. And some of these guys, I'm mentioning their last names because they're just, Bob just passed this year. Don's been gone for quite a while. And in our home group, they knew how to do the work. And they were doing the work the way, and I didn't know this at the time, but they were doing the work like Big Book Awakening because they were they were the source material for the Big Book Awakening. They were the source material because Don Pritz sponsored Joe Hawk and Mark Houston. Mark goes out, Joe go out to make amends out in Santa Monica, and they hook up out there, and they have the Salvation Army. Dan Sherman meets Joe Hawk. They start going through the work, and we'll get into it here in a little bit. But the bottom line is, I was going through the work the way that Tyla is talking about the work, but I didn't do it right away. I was, I'm going to sponsor myself. I'm going to get my own sponsor. I don't need anybody to tell me who a sponsor is. I'll get my own sponsor. My first sponsor was drunk. My first sponsor was on the sly drinking, and he wasn't showing up to meetings. And I thought, what the heck's going on here? He takes me through a 4-step of his version of it: check a box, check a box, check the box, check the box. And he said, "Hey, Pat, what do you see?" And I go, "I see a whole page full of boxes that are checked." "Well, there you go. Good job." And then he said, "Be on your way." I go, "Wait a minute, Tom. What do you mean be on my way? Aren't there some more steps? Isn't there like a step 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12? Isn't there something more?" And he goes, "Yeah, but you'll get it. Just go on about your business." That was my first sponsor. And I'm wondering why in the first 3 or 4 months that I'm losing my mind, that I'm getting more insane, not less insane. I want to die more than I want to live. And I'm watching one guy in the room that's getting it, and he was actually going through the work the way that we described the work in the Big Book Awakening. And his life was changing. He was a bottom end drunk just like me, but he wasn't wanting to put a gun in his mouth anymore. He wasn't wanting to take himself out. He wasn't homicidal. He wasn't suicidal. And I couldn't understand how in the rip he was changing. He's going to 3 meetings a day, just like me, because neither one of us have a job. We're not employable. But his life is changing. And so I finally, because, fellowship, spirit of the fellowship, we're all loving and caring for each other. So I go up to him after a meeting one day, about 3 or 4 months into my sobriety, which is a miracle, by the way. It's the longest I've been sober since I was 14 years old. So I don't even know that God's doing for me what I can't do for myself, even before I wanted God in my life. God's already rescuing us before I even knew. And so I go up to Aaron, I say, Aaron, what the heck? What are you doing? And Aaron says, and I said, you are changing. You're talking about this third, Ty was talking about extended third column. I said, you're talking about this extended third column. You're talking about the fear is running the whole show, that it's driving these delusions, that it's taking over your selfish attitude, it's doing self-seeking behavior, and then it's running the entire third column, that there's a power greater than me, and you're having an experience with being insane in your body, mind, and spirit, and that's a spiritual malady, and you can't control the bedevilments, but only God can. Aaron, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Because I'm not hearing this anywhere. And Aaron says, well, it's my sponsor. I go, oh, that's so great. Aaron, who's your sponsor? I'm not telling you. There's no way in the world I'm telling you who my sponsor is, Pat, because you're a mad dog, and I know that you're going to go after this guy, and I'll never have any more time for him, and I need him. And he was right. I chased him around. I chased Aaron around like a sleuth, like a little detective for about, I don't know, 3 weeks. And I found Bill T. And I came to Bill T and I said, and, I'm going to speed through this, but, my life was hanging in the balance, and I wasn't a crier, but I had tears in my eyes. And I said, Bill, whatever you're doing with Aaron is working. And if I don't get something, I'm going to die. Will you do with me what you're doing with Aaron? I didn't even have verbiage for the big book. I didn't know. And Bill was a parole guy, officer, and so he was a mad dog. And so we started going through the work, and you know what? He was taking me through the Big Book Awakening. I didn't know it. And the first words out of his mouth in the very first meeting, he said, Pat, are you open to God? I said, no, I'm not open to God. God abandoned me. I don't have a relationship with God. There's no way. And he said, well, that's going to be a challenge, because if you're not open to the possibility of you having a relationship with God, this is not going to work. It's all about God. Folks, this isn't my first meeting. This isn't my first meeting with my sponsor. And he did not go soft on me about God at all, because why in the world would I not tell somebody the truth? If I'm on the edge of a building, I'm not going to say, hey, you might not want to step off of that because their gravity's going to get you and you're going to fall to your death. No, I'm going to tell you, get back from the wall. Get back so you don't die. Pat, go to God because he's going to save your life. That was his message. So shortly thereafter, my life starts changing. We'll talk more about it. But Karen, my wife, who's a mad dog, she's like 32 years sober, and she knows Tyla. We fellowship together for, I don't know, plus 20 years now. And we go up to the Fellowship of the Spirit conference up in Colorado, and I meet Don Pritz another time. I mean, he's speaking shortly before he dies. And I get exposed to these tapes by some guy named Mark H. and some guy named Joe H. And I don't know who they are. Who's Mark H. and Joe H. And so Karen and I were moving out to California. And so I put it in my little bag. And I said to Karen, why don't we listen to these guys on the way out? And and by the way, right next to the tapes for Joe H. and Mark H. was on the desk this little workbook, which, looks like this. It's very small and thin and hadn't changed over the years. And they said, why don't we get one of those little workbooks and see what that's about? And so we get in the car and we're driving from Colorado to California. which is, with dogs, we had dogs. So it was about 17 hours, couple, 2.5 days of driving between everything we were doing. And we put that tape in before we left Denver, and we didn't stop listening to it till we got to San Diego. We played it over and over and over and over again because I had never heard recovery like I heard from Joe Hawk and Mark Houston. So much so, get this, I get out to California, and I don't know Tyla yet. Tyla and I hadn't met. We're not going to meet for probably about another year. But in the meantime, I'm thinking, I'm getting Joe and I'm getting Mark and I'm bringing them to San Diego to speak to all area San Diego, California at the service have a big weekend in the big book. I said, man, it's going to be great. So I go to the people in the service committee of the area of San Diego, and they looked at me, and you would have thought I was asking the Baptist preacher, can Satan speak at the church on Sunday? It was not well received. And I mean, I had no idea why it wasn't well received. And I think what happens over the years, we have a couple decades now of doing this work, what ends up happening is people get married to a process, they get married to notoriety and stage character, if you will, and they forget that what we're chasing is this wonderful, incredible, vital, loving relationship with God. And we're all going the same direction. So they did not want Mark and Joe at all. So now I'm going to tell you the other part of that story before I go on to some other parts. It's now 20 years later. Almost 20 years. It's 2020. So it was like, well, 15 years later. 2005 is when this happens. And 15 years later, San Diego area service, the very same people that rejected Mark and Joe, called me up and they said, would you be our speaker to tell your experience with why Big Book Awakening has such a phenomenal success in recovery? And they let me at the General Service Conference in San Diego give a pitch for an hour about Big Book Awakening. And the reason they did it is because now Tyla and Seth and Shawnee Boy and Eric and Patty and a lot of people on here, I'm forgetting, I'm not forgetting, but there's just too many people to name. We have this experience of being set free. We have this experience of God doing for us what we can't do ourselves. And the reality of page 25, this miracle of a new life with God, this miracle of God doing for us what we can't do for ourselves, this miracle of being able to say that the presence of God is the most important thing in our life was happening. And it wasn't happening in a little way, it was happening all over the place. And so I got to share that message. And now, it just keeps on going. And so this COVID thing, here we are in COVID. This is a result of COVID, this meeting. We got fellowship all over the world, all of us together. God opening up doors. That's horrible disease, that horrible illness, COVID that was taking people out. We lost people. Tyler lost people to COVID. I did too. It was horrible, but God meant it for something good. And out of this came what we're experiencing today. So now I want to share just a couple thoughts. In Dan's workbook, Big Book Awakening workbook, he starts out, I'm just going to read this because it's important. And I know a lot of you don't have the Big Book Awakening workbook, but here's what here, the very first page, and it's all, let me take my filter off here so you can see what I'm looking at. Okay, there we go. This is my workbook. It's got all sorts of writing. It's I got it scotch taped together because it's falling apart. And the very first thing it says, this book was not written, Pat, to replace the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It was written as a tool to be used in conjunction with the Big Book. Dan was never about notoriety for himself. He was never about trying to get a name for himself. He did not want to become world famous in this thing. He was not. Youngsters the one to put it on the map. Yes. Tyler would drag him all over the place to speak at this, speak at that, do a workshop here, do a workshop there, send him over to Australia. I mean, put a phone meeting together. Dan was, Tyler was sort of like, she's youngster. There's only one and only youngster. She got the deal done. So it wasn't meant to replace the big book. And then he says at the very end, he said, Pat, by the way, that's just the way I read the big book anymore. I always personalize it because you know what? We want to have an experience even today. It says it's important to have an open mind and remember to keep your focus on your personal experience and not on your knowledge of the big book. Folks, it's not about knowledge. It's not. It's important to know the truth, but if I don't have an interaction with the truth that leads me to God, then I missed everything. He says it's not about knowledge of the big book or the program. Hey, Pat, knowledge, this book, the big book, or any human power, including meetings, can't by itself keep you sober. Don't worship the process. Remember that all these things are what takes you to God, which will keep you sober. So Dan, from the very beginning, is saying, listen, this isn't about Big Book Awakening. This is about you having a vital experience with God, because if you don't get it, if you don't have the spiritual awakening, you're probably going to die. And for all of us on this call that are mad dogs, that are low bottom drunks or low bottom addicts, we don't have second state. There's not another door. And here's how Dan closes off the Big Book Awakening on page 100 of his workbook. He says this: continue to consider the big book through page 164, looking at your experience and for instructions, because Dan's work, the Big Book Awakening, only goes through working with others. It ends on page 103. But then he says, and I personalize it again, Pat, continue to ask God for guidance in practicing these principles you've experienced in all of your affairs. Walk with God. That's how he opens this Big Book Awakening workbook. That's how he closes the Big Book Awakening workbook. You know what? Interestingly, you know how Dr. Silkworth closes off his doctor's opinion? With a prayer. You may have come here to scoff, Pat. You may have come here to say, you know what, you might have a different way. You're going to be judgy. You're going to be critical. You're going to be condescending. You're going to be, you know more than us. And Dr. Silkworth says, you came here to scoff, Pat. Why don't you remain here to pray? That's how Dr. Silkworth ends it. And then how does the big book in the program end on page 164? It's a prayer. It's a prayer of a loving invitation to take this message of recovery in all of its clarity and precisely deliver it to those who are suffering. It asks me, it invites me to go to God on a daily basis and look at people's eyes. I remember when Shawnee and I met. Shawnee, you remember that? Up on the work. And I've had the pleasure of being in Shawnee's home and being with him up in San Francisco and years now. Shawnee was dead. Shawnee was dead. And I'm looking at God and I'm looking at Shawnee in the first meeting. And sorry, Shawnee, you're public about it, so I'm not outing you. And I'm thinking to God, God, if you don't do some God stuff here, Shawnee's not going to make it. And God, I know you're about loving everybody. And I absolutely know you're going to do it with Shawnee. And Shawnee's a living testament to this still. So here's the deal. We have a prayer on a daily basis. Would you please? And how much do I 1 minute? How much time do I have left, youngster?
You got 20 minutes.
I'm at 20 minutes right now.
You got 20 minutes left.
I got 20 minutes left?
Yeah.
You gotta be kidding me. All right, you guys are in really trouble now. So Shawnee gets it. We get it. And the big book ends on page 164 saying, you know what, Pat? Will you please on a daily basis come to me? This is God. Will you come to me and I will give you power and authority and the words and the message to help that still suffering alcoholic. And every one of us on this call, every one of us that has this, has that privilege and that responsibility to carry on this message. Big Book Awakening when I look at the history, and I got involved with Tyla in 2005, and we've been running hard ever since. We've never slowed down ever. In fact, if anything, we're faster now than we ever were. And we're more excited about recovery than we ever been. We're more excited about our relationship with God than we ever have. I have more experience with God today than I ever have. I have miracles ever have. I'm praying over my dogs yesterday. They had surgery and they both came out of it fine. We got miracles happening all over the place, not only in the rooms, but outside the rooms. Because of Big Book Awakening, I have a major position in a pretty big firm here in San Diego that's not worldwide, it's nationwide. And everybody knows I'm a recovered alcoholic, and everybody knows that I pray openly with my people. You come into my office at my office, and because of what God's done in my life, and because of what Big Book Awakening has done, and because of what truth does, I pray with people. People that are dying, people that are losing their job, people that are moving on, people that don't know which ends up, people that are in fear. And because of this program and what Dan put together, we have a precise way of living life that answers all of our questions. And who's that answer? It's God. And I start experimenting with God because of Dan Sherman. I'll tell you more about that here in a minute. You start experimenting with God because God is open to the experiment, people. God is open to your questions. God is open to you saying, I don't know about you, God. I don't know. I'm a little bit sketchy about you. I had some terrible experiences in my past. For me personally, hey, God, how come you let that guy sexually molest me that was in the church? That's not a very cool thing. I don't know about that, God. What about that? And then we go on about our experiences and we have all these sketchy ideas about God and we blame God for a lot of stuff that people do, not God. And so I'm not open to God. But I become open because God bless the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and God bless Dan Sherman that when they designed the first step, it takes me 8-9 weeks to get through the first step. Now I know that Dr. Bob was taking people through the work in 4 or 5 hours. I know that Clarence Snyder was doing it in a weekend. I get it. It isn't a size fits all kind of thing. But the point is, if I don't understand what I'm up against, and the Big Book Awakening does this so well, my first step experiences, I absolutely will drink. My experience isn't don't drink no matter what. Call your sponsor. Make sure you go to enough meetings, 90 meetings, 90 days. That'll do the trick. Be in more service, sponsor more people. No. The truth in my experience is that I'll drink no matter what, unless I have God of my understanding standing between me and the drink. Now, here's the good news. God wants to stand between me and the drink more than I want God to stand between me and the drink. God wants my sobriety, my clean time. God wants my life in his hands even more than I want my life in God's hands. See, God outdoes my desires gazillion fold every day. He says, Pat, I'm going to take you to places in your relationship with me that you don't even understand. Your way of thinking, your way of living, your way of believing is going to radically shift. And I'm going to use this big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm going to use this Big Book Awakening process to unlock your head so that you can consider questions honestly, fact find and fact face, and Pat, so that you can have an experience. And when you have an experience, you're going to be kissing me. You're going to be kissing me. You're going to be having this, you're going to have a touch point with me that you can't even believe. You know, what I admired about Dan so much is his humility and his love. He was an incredibly loving human being and he loved God. And when he would consider things that he wanted to put into the Big Book Awakening, do you realize that Big Book Awakening took him 10 years to write? He put the questions together with Joe Hawk as a response to Joe Hawk's sponsorship of Dan. Joe would say to Dan on every time he'd get together, says, find me the questions on this page, come back and show me. And so Dan, being a good student, would go and find all the questions on page 25. He'd find all the questions on page 52. He'd find all the questions on page 30. And he would bring these back to Joe, and Joe's response was, and he wasn't giving great feedback to Dan at all. So Dan's getting a little bit miffed, but he keeps on doing. And by the very end of the sponsorship with Joe, he has a work, if you will, a workbook put together of statements turned into questions on every single page. Because Joe said at the end of the preface, he said, listen, when you're looking at this big book, look at it this way. Consider these questions just like they did in the original. And it says this in the Ford. The preface says, "Hey Pat, do you have a drinking problem? Ask yourself, do you have a drinking problem? Do you have a using problem?" And then it says, "Pause when reading. Will I pause and consider when I'm reading this big book?" And then the next question, yes, did this happen to me? In other words, is this my experience that I've had? And then a more important question, did I feel like this? And then the most important question, do I think this program could work for me? Another way to say it, how free do I want to be? Another way to say it, can I go further than I am today in this program of Alcoholics Anonymous? Wherever I'm at, whatever's going on in my life. And so we go through this first step experience with Dan, and I find out that my body is insane. It's craving more and more and more of the very substance that's destroying my liver, that's destroying my mind, that's destroying my throat, that is taking my physical life from me. And then I find out that I'm insane from a mental point of view. I'm absolutely insane. I keep on living in the past. The 1, 2, 3 years of successful drinking where it was giving me the rage, it was saving me, it was doing all the cool things. Oh my gosh, it saved my life at age 14. From 14 to 17, it saved my life. From 17 to 43, it killed my life. And yet I wanted to live back at 14 and 17 and 16 and 15. If I could just recapture those days. And I find out that I can't get it done. And Dan, the way that he puts the big book Awakening together is I'm asking myself questions, just as many questions as there are every single page, all the way through more about alcoholism and into 3 pages of We Agnostics to find out the truth in my first step experience. And on page 23, it's telling me, and Dan makes a big point of this, listen, the problem centers in your mind, Pat. But that, unfortunately, is not the end of the story. That's only on page 23. See, what's driving the problem that centers in my mind, which must be changed, is a spiritual evil malady that, make no bones about it, and we're very clear with people about this in Big Book Awakening, my spiritual malady is out to kill me on a daily basis. It is out to destroy my life. It is out to take away any thread of self-esteem, any thread of togetherness with other people, any semblance of feeling good enough about anything in my life. It wants to destroy and break apart all of my relationships and make me a lone wolf and die in a heap. The spiritual malady is out to kill me. And what Dan makes clear in the Big Book Awakening process is God has declared war on your spiritual malady. And Pat, God doesn't lose. Ever. Never. And so when we talk to people in the Big Book Awakening, we don't talk about, well, it just can be some rough times and I hope you make it through. It'll be okay. And, just sort of grin and bear it. Just keep the upper lip strong. You'll get through better times. It'll be okay. Go buy some more stuff. Go get a new wife. Go get a new husband. You'll get something. Just do something. None of that works. If I don't have God of my understanding doing something deep down in my soul, in my spirit, that transforms the very soil that my roots of my life touch, I'm going to die. spiritually, soulfully, physically. I'm going to die. And we understand this. And the spiritual malady says, Pat, I'm going to give you 20 answers for how to get over the bedevilments. You hear those voices in your head. You have the problems in relationships. You have this emotional nature that you can't control. You have misery and depression, which, by the way, people don't want to talk about that misery and depression in the rooms of dry, sober, clean addicts and alcoholics who are not recovered. And why are they struggling so? Why are they struggling so with depression? Now, I'm a big believer that when the big book's really clear about this, we seek outside counsel. This is not a testimony against physicians or medical practice. It is an opportunity and an offering to say, you know what, if we go through this process, maybe there's a way to get through these bedevilments, which are symptoms of my selfish self-centeredness that I cannot control, that I cannot beat. This disease is too cunning, too powerful, too baffling. It is something too big for me. I've got to have help. There's only one that has all the power to do anything about any of this stuff, and that's God. And yes, my version and my concept of God has changed radically over the years. And God invites me to do so. God invites me to find more and more truth of who he is. And so these bedevilments are showing up in my life and they're killing me. Don Pritz used to have this statement. He'd say, listen, sobriety without a solution is cruelty. You strike somebody sober and you don't give them a way out of the mindscape that's going on in their head, the heartscape that's all locked down, the imprisonment of their spirit, their inability to overcome fears, their inability to face life as life is. You're giving them a disaster. You're giving them cruelty. And then he follows this up. He says, but Pat, when you deliver this precise message, when you deliver these clear-cut directions, when you deliver and help somebody walk through and have an experience with this textbook, which is meant to be studied, thank you, Dan, do it with love. Because if you don't do it with love, Pat, you are being nothing short of being a thug. You are being brutal. You're being heartless. You're being unloving. We hear all the time, in different rooms, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. We don't want anything you have to do with. We don't want to hear anything from you, blah, blah, blah. That's not in the big book. In fact, the big book in step one, in working with others, says very clearly the reason we have meetings on a weekly basis is so that newcomers can bring their problems to us. I'm sorry. How are we going to know if they have problems if they're not allowed to share? How's that going to happen? But here's the spirit of the fellowship. When we have awakened, this is another thing Dan was big on, is the spirit of the fellowship doing spirit of the fellowship stuff? Am I showing up loving and caring and honest and sincere and spending a couple hours with the suffering new guy to get to know his life and what's going on and asking him questions, not delivering my pontificating message? Asking him what's going on in your life. Am I being loving? Am I being tolerant? Am I being kind? Am I being patient with his shortcomings? Page 19 kind of stuff. Am I being what the fellowship was always designed to be, which is a beckoning station, a light station, a safe harbor for people who are dying? And if I have recovered, I'm going to show up like that. I am going to be loving. So Dan sits there and he tells us that, we go through an exercise with Dan. One of the things that we do is God everything or God is nothing? What's your choice? And one of the things that we've done over the years is we asked people to go through the work and it varies in amounts of time and we have to, you do it with your sponsor, your step guide. But you ask this person for a couple, 2-3 days, act as if there's no God. Act as if God cannot be addressed. Act as if you can't pray, You can't hope. You can't allude. You can't turn to. You can't ask. You can't pray. You can't do anything that would remotely turn you to God. And then after you've lost your mind, which is usually an hour, 2 hours, 5 hours, then now consider, is God everything? God is everything. Now go to God. Go to God big. Go to God with all who you are. So that was another one of these exercises that Dan brought in. A few other things I wanted to share on before I forget. You know, Dan's hope in what we do, and I think what we try to model, is that when people have this experience, with the big book, the way we go through it, their lives are going to be revolutionized, and it's no longer going to be theory. It's going to be actuality. And so I could go on, but I think I'm gonna cut out right here. I think this is good. Um, let's turn this open to a meeting. I think sort of getting the nod from God to shush and let God do some God stuff here. Okay. I love you guys. Thanks for letting me share.